The Airbnb correction is crushing hosts and causing a lot of people to have to sell. So let's talk about it. I know you've probably felt it, right? The bookings are down and expenses are up and profits are quickly shrinking. And maybe your place used to be booked solid just like mine was, but now you're staring at empty dates on the calendar and it's extremely frustrating. Or worse, you're barely breaking even or losing money thanks to higher mortgage rates, rising costs, and then the cutthroat competition. You are not alone. You're absolutely not alone. Thousands of Airbnb hosts right now are rushing to sell their properties. Now, I know what you might be thinking to yourself, Sean, this was supposed to be an amazing investment for us. This was supposed to be my way of figuring out how to build wealth through real estate. I was told that it was going to be easy. It's passive. It's something that I can do on my own. And this has been one of the biggest points of contention for me. This bill of goods people have been sold about Airbnb and just how easy it is. This right here is exactly why so many people are starting to get out. I'm gonna say this, the majority of people considering selling their properties right now all bought during a very specific time period. You know that time. It was during the COVID era, right? And I'm saying not all of it, but most likely from like 2022 up until and maybe a little bit after 2024 and even still right now. So that group, that's the largest portion of people who are deciding to sell their Airbnbs because the market right now is correcting and it's happening very, very fast. Now, I will say this, for every location throughout the US that allows Airbnb, it's a little bit different, right? There's always nuance to certain areas, but for the most part, the pattern is the same, especially when you look at Airbnbs in certain types of locations, particularly destination locations. And do you know what a destination location is? It's those parts of the US where people specifically go to vacation, specifically like me in the Poconos Mountains or either the Jersey Shore, the Delaware beaches, Maryland beaches, Adirondacks in New York, and the ski mountains in Vermont, and Vail, Colorado, and all those places that people go to specifically to vacation, right? And a really hard-hit place are a lot of the beach towns in Florida. These destination locations, they're not places with a lot of full-time residents. They're vacation spots, they're second home spots. And these areas, in my opinion, are going to be hit the hardest and being hit the hardest right now. So next up are the areas in major cities where all the crackdowns have happened, all the legislation, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But between these two categories, right, the destination locations and the major cities with the new regulations, the two main types of markets where people are selling off their Airbnbs. So if you do own a property right now and you are feeling the stress and the bookings are slowing down and the constant expenses are piling up, drop a comment. Let's talk. Tell me where you're located and what you're experiencing so we can get through this together. Here is what's driving this massive sell-off. First and foremost is the oversupply, which is crushing profits. The number one reason hosts are selling right now is simple. It's the oversupply. It's absolutely crushing everything. The short-term rental market exploded during COVID and even before a little bit. Everyone saw the opportunity. Mortgage rates were low and it seemed like it was easy money. But now there are too many Airbnbs all across the US in vacation hotspots, places like the Poconos and the Jersey Shore and Myrtle Beach and Florida and all the ski towns across the US. The inventory absolutely exploded. There are more options for guests than ever before. Where there used to be like 100 homes competing for bookings in certain areas, especially where I am in Talamancing Trails in the Pocono Mountains, there's 300 or 400 or 500 or more. So the result has been the occupancy rates are way down. Prices are way up. And if your listing isn't in the top 5 to 10% in terms of quality, amenities, and marketing, you're losing bookings to someone else. The second main reason is rising costs. So on top of lower revenue, every single cost you deal with as a host is up. Mortgage rates are through the roof, and we all know that, especially if you bought after 2021. Insurance premiums, especially in those disaster-prone areas, are climbing through the roof as well. Local governments are piling on new taxes and permits for this and fees for that just to operate legally. It's absolute insanity. And then you have things like your maintenance costs, right? The cleaning fees, even things like snow removal, salt is very expensive right now in the Poconos specifically. And it's wild, right? There was literally a salt shortage this winter, and the price of basic snow removal went up. That squeeze between lower bookings and higher costs, it's wiping out profits. The third thing, and I've alluded to this already, it's regulations that they're tightening, right? There's been a huge regulatory crackdown. Major cities like New York and Chicago and Houston are either banning investor-owned short-term rentals outright, or they're putting in strict rules requiring hosts to live on site or only rent primary residences. And it's absolutely insane. You can't even have a second home. And these smaller towns, they're getting in on it too, right? Everyone's trying to get theirs, often responding to local complaints about housing affordability. Even in my own area, near Philadelphia, in Westchester, the town over from mine, they outright banned short-term rentals at one point before they worked out a compromise, right? So it's absolutely nuts. If your area hasn't tightened regulations yet, don't assume you're safe. It is going to happen. Absolutely going to happen. I'm seeing all of this firsthand in my Pocono neighborhood. When I first bought, there were maybe a couple dozen homes for sale at any given time, give or take. Now there's over 65 listings just in my little development. And that happens when hosts flood the market. Buyers have choices now. They're negotiating hard. And if you're overpriced, you're just gonna sit. Even if you're priced pretty fairly, you're pretty much just gonna sit. I really need to hammer this home. The number one mistake I see hosts make when they decide to sell is overpricing based on what they paid or what they want instead of pricing for today's reality. Look, buyers don't care what you need. I'm sorry, they don't. They care about their numbers, their income. They want your expenses. They want to see what you've been making in the past 12 months. They want to see what your occupancy rate is. So if your financials are weak and you're overpriced, you're just going to sit while everyone else cuts the price around you. So if you need someone to help you sell your property, whether it's in the Poconos or anywhere in the US, just reach out, click that link in the description, schedule an appointment with me. I can connect you with an agent anywhere in the US or even Canada. Moving on, the fourth reason why people are selling is because of the declining occupancy rates. And we have all known that this is going to happen. And if you don't know, now you do. And this isn't just happening in my market, it's really happening across the entire US. Airbnb occupancy rates nationally have dropped to around 54%. And that's just as of April in 2024. That could go down even more now that we're in 2025. And that's a notable drop from previous years. And it's being felt coast to coast. And let me bring this home. I always tie this back to the Poconos because that's the market that I know best. And the Pocono market right now is flooded with listings. It's a neutral to a buyer's market in most areas. It's not that people stop vacationing. They're still coming, but they have so many more options than they did prior to COVID. So what happens when you have more supply? That means fewer bookings per year per property. And it's not that it's just the Poconos or Florida or Sedona, Arizona that stopped being desirable. It's that there's just too much supply. So again, more options equals fewer bookings per home, which equals lower occupancy rates, and that equals lower profits. In my HOA, again, when I bought in 2021, there were under 100 listings total. And in this area, we're pushing like 400 or close to 500 now. And that's just in one little community. If your property, again, it's not in that top 5 to 10% in terms of the amenities, you have to have amazing photos and provide amazing guest experience. You have to be priced well strategically. You have to market strategically. You're just not going to get booked. This isn't a set it and forget it game. It's not passive income. It's active. It's aggressive, strategic. And if you're not willing to fight for those bookings, you're going to get left behind. It's funny because it's like, I bought my house in 2021, in September of 2021. And in October, we went live that year. And we literally had bookings immediately. But as the year went on and into 2022, the competition was ramping up and we could absolutely feel, right? And it isn't as bad as it is right now, but we knew that it was coming. It's a totally different reality right now. Why it's harder for newer hosts and for the people who bought in late 2021 or even 22 and then going into 2024, they bought at much higher prices with higher mortgage rates. And now they're seeing lower occupancy and lower nightly rates. That's just a brutal combination and it's not sustainable. If that's you, you're not alone. A lot of people are going through this, but you need to know the math isn't in your favor. There have been a lot of investors that got into properties using the no doc loans, right? Those DSCR loans, where you didn't have to show your tax returns or your income. And they are convenient, I get that, but they're very expensive. The plan was always to refinance into something better once rates dropped because those rates were really high, but that window hasn't even opened yet. And it's not just the mortgage and it's not just the insurance and it's the rising cost of everything. We know that we're in an extremely inflationary period right now. And we know that it feels like we've been in a recession for so long and it doesn't seem like there is a way out for a lot of people. That causes a lot of hosts to start dipping into their own pockets to cover mortgage payments, to cover their cleaners and everything else just to stay afloat. And I had to do that myself for a few months. So what does this all mean right now? If you are currently hosting, it means that you're not just competing for bookings, you're actually competing to sell. The hosts are deciding to cash out, and that's creating a lot of market inventory in a lot of these different markets, especially in the Poconos. Again, my own community, we're less than 40 listings for a long time, and now we're at close to 75. And that's turning into more of a buyer's market. And buyers know it, and they have the upper hand. They're negotiating hard. And if you're overpriced, they're just going to move right past you. They're not even going to look at the house. So if you are thinking about selling or you're just wondering whether now's the right time, make sure you reach out. I know it can feel stressful and I know it can feel daunting, but this is the reality. This is what we have to look forward to. So if you want to know more about my story and why I'm getting out right now, make sure you click on the video right here.